Ma'am, and I use that term loosely. If that cane is load-bearing, it's the most useful thing you've brought to this range today. The 800-meter known distance range at the Marine Sniper course is flat and pale under an overcast February sky, the kind that sits low enough to make the target line at the far end look like a rumor. 23 candidates in Class 26-1 stand in 2 loose ranks at the firing line, all of them in full utilities, data books against their chests, waiting for Gunnery Sergeant Mike Calder to finish the morning safety brief. He delivered that line at full cadre volume, not to the woman standing at the gate, not to her face, but to his class, turning slightly toward them as he did it, so the performance had an audience, and the audience understood what it was supposed to feel. That was the point. Establish the hierarchy before the day begins. Make the distinction public and clear and early, so there is no ambiguity later about who belongs on this line and who does not. She does not respond. She is already walking. Civilian observer's badge on her left chest. Cane in her right hand. Nothing else on her person that identifies what she is, what unit she belongs to, what she has spent the last 12 years doing with a rifle in her hands. She walks at an even pace, the cane touching down with neither urgency nor apology, and she reaches the designated observer position, a plastic chair beside the scoring table at the edge of the firing line, and does not sit. She sets the chair aside with one hand, the gesture economical and unhurried, and stands. Calder has 17 years in the Corps. He's 35 years old, and he has learned to read a range the way other men read weather. And what he reads when he looks at her is a liability, a rehabilitation case, a desk assignment placeholder, someone's administrative favor made flesh and sent to his line. He finishes the safety brief without acknowledging her again. The class takes its cue from him. They do not know whether to look at her or not, and so most of them look straight ahead. He is 5 years older than her. He does not know that. He is 1 pay grade below her. He does not know that either. Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb, Cadre 2nd, flanks right and makes a note of her without being obvious about it. Webb has been Calder's instrument for 3 class cycles, a competent technical cadre who learned early that attaching himself to the right senior NCO is a career decision as consequential as any qualification score. He watches the observer from the right flank and watches Calder watch her and takes his cues from both. At 06:15, the range safety officer hands her a clipboard and the day's printed exercise schedule. She takes both without looking away from the 800-meter line. She reviews the schedule once and goes still. Not the stillness of someone who has run out of things to do. The other kind. At 06:31 hours, the first string fires. 11 rifles simultaneously. The concussion arrives as a single compression event, a wall of displaced air and sound that imposes itself on every body in the lane, traveling through bone and chest cavity and eardrums, whether or not those eardrums are protected. 2 cadre members absorb it through the long habit of professional exposure, their shoulders carrying a micro-reflex that 17 years of strings has never fully eliminated. Even Calder blinks. The range safety officer, standing 6 feet from the observer stake, flinches at the percussion and catches himself. She does not move. Weight centered on the cane, shoulders level, eyes tracking the target line at 800 meters. Not a millimeter of involuntary adjustment anywhere. No physiological startle. No shift in body weight. No tightening of the jaw. Nothing. The rifles fire through her the way weather passes through a fixed structure, finding no purchase, changing nothing. The range safety officer turns to look at her directly. He looks back at the line. He turns back to her a second time. Against the corrugated metal shed at the south perimeter fence, a man who was never introduced has been standing with his arms crossed since 0600 hours. Master Sergeant Eli Voss, retired, prior MARSOC, 28 years in the rifle, employed now by the school as a civilian range technical advisor, a title that means he walks where he wants and answers to no one below the commandant. He watched the string fire. He watched the cadre absorb it. He watched her stand in the middle of all that concussion like a stake driven into the ground. He pulls a small green pocket notepad from his left breast pocket, makes a single penciled entry, and closes it. He pockets the notepad. He uncrosses his arms. He takes one deliberate step away from the shed wall, not toward Calder, not toward the class, not toward the RSO or the line, or any of the range infrastructure he is employed to observe. Toward her. 3 days later, the mode has changed. The performance is still present. It is always present with Calder. But under it now sits something colder and more deliberate. Surveillance. He watches the observer from the head of the line the way a man watches a door. He is not entirely certain he locked, looking for the small evidence that would confirm what he already believes. The morning exercise on day 3 is a wind estimation drill on the 600-meter line. Variable crosswind, 12 knots. The flags reading inconsistently across the 200 and 400-meter stations, a condition the Marine Sniper Course produces deliberately on days with the right forecast, because inconsistent wind conditions on a known distance range are the closest approximation to the field environment the school can manufacture without leaving the installation. The drill is not complicated in principle. In execution, it is the thing that eliminates candidates who understand marksmanship as a mechanical checklist rather than as a reading problem. You cannot be right about an inconsistent crosswind by applying a formula. You have to read the range. Sergeant Hewitt, third in the lane order, goes prone, settles his hold, and fires. The round falls right at 600 meters, visible in the spotting scope the RSO holds at the scoring table. Calder calls the miss by the numbers: wind value, flag read, point of impact, delta. Standard cadre delivery. His voice carries to every candidate in the lane. 12 feet from the flagpole station, the woman with the cane is already reading the range. She is not using the flags. She reads the Mirage band, tracking its lateral angle at 200-meter intervals down the lane, cross-referencing a light refraction shimmer near the 400-meter mark that the flags have not yet registered because the flags respond to air at post height, not at the intermediate band where the round will actually travel. Her eyes do not move in a search pattern. They settle, position by position, the way a spotter calls holds in sequence when he has worked a range long enough to know what the air does there at this hour in this kind of overcast, not looking for information so much as confirming it, checking each variable against what the eye already expects. She walks to the flagpole station and moves the observation stake 8 inches to the southeast. No instruction given. No address to the class. No explanation to the RSO. No commentary directed at Calder or Webb or anyone standing on the line. She walks back to the observer position and stands. The RSO says nothing. Calder watches from the head of the line with both hands behind his back and says nothing to her, because anything he says in front of the class becomes part of whatever it is that just happened. Hewitt re-engages, center mass at 600 meters. At 11:15 hours in the range schoolhouse classroom, tiered seating, whiteboard, range maps tacked across the south wall. Calder conducts data book review with the class. He works through the morning entries by candidate and by lane. When he reaches Hewitt's entry, he reads the correction aloud, pauses long enough for the class to understand. The pause is intentional and addresses the room. One good call is coincidence. Don't write it in a data book like it's a skill. He does not name her. He has not named her once. He doesn't need to. Everyone in the room understood the sentence before he finished it. In the observer row at the back, Eli Voss opens the green notepad to a fresh page. At 11:45 hours, in the corridor between the classroom and the arms room, Calder pulls Webb away from the foot traffic and lowers his voice. He wants her observer badge downgraded to spectator only. No line proximity. No range contact during live strings. A restriction that would reduce her to a face at a window. Webb says the commandant's office will need to sign off. Calder's answer is immediate and clear. Don't check. Do. She has already moved the observation stake. It is in Hewitt's data book now, time-stamped and verified by the impact, undeniable in the way that physical evidence is undeniable. In the target pit at 800 meters, the paper comes back pasted, the impact marked, the diameter measured. Sub-MOI. The hold implied by 8 inches of stake repositioning accounts for both the flag read and the mirage drift simultaneously. A two-variable solution the class has not yet been formally taught to integrate. The candidates are looking at the number on the board. Calder turns away from it. The number stays there without his help, and it will be in the data book record for this class cycle, whether he turns from it or not. 10 days into the class, Calder is no longer the only force in the room. He has not recruited anyone explicitly. Institutional gravity does not require explicit recruitment. A senior cadre instructor's contempt is a kind of barometric pressure, and people adjust to it without being told to, because the alternative is being caught in the middle when the weather turns. The stalking phase assessment opens at 1000 hours on a 300-meter grass strip, elevated observation posts at the far end, artificial concealment obstacles positioned along the lane. At intervals, the candidates were not briefed on in advance. He positions himself to deliver the stalk brief from directly beside her observer marker, a painted white stake 10 meters off the lane edge, close enough that the spatial association is legible to every candidate in the formation without being stated aloud. He talks about candidates who have never actually belly-crawled a lane in real field conditions, and what a person's attitude toward preparation reveals about their professional judgment. Standard cadre cadence, standard volume. It carries to the lane edges and beyond. At 12:20 hours, at the 150-meter observation post, he calls a halt and pulls Lance Corporal Donnie Reyes from her stalk position. Reyes is 21 years old, the youngest candidate in class 26-1, the only other woman on the lane. The stop is predicated on a ghillie attachment violation, trailing burlap at the left shoulder, 3 inches loose, a real and documentable breach of the stalk standard. The correction takes 40 seconds. The lesson Calder builds around it takes 4 minutes, delivered at halted lane volume with 3 lane observers and 6 candidates in adjacent positions, all close enough to hear every word. 3 inches of burlap, Lance Corporal. He is not looking at her. He's looking past her, at the lane, at the candidates who can hear him. 3 inches is what a hide sight looks like to a counter sniper 1 hour before he finds it. 3 inches is what gets a spotter killed for somebody else's discipline problem. He talks about attention to detail, about candidates who allow small errors to compound into pattern failures, about whether certain individuals are fundamentally suited to the demands of the work, or whether they are here because someone upstream believed that suitability could be aspirational rather than demonstrated. He never identifies a demographic. He does not use a name that is not Reyes. He does not need to. Some candidates earn the right to be on this lane. His voice has not risen. It does not need to. Others arrive at this lane because someone above this command decided earning could be a formality. I am not going to tell you which kind you are, Lance Corporal. I am going to let your data book tell me. And so far, your data book is telling me a story I have heard before. Reyes stands at attention in full ghillie. Her hands at her sides are not quite still. She is 21 years old, and she has been on this lane for 10 days, and she came here because she is, in fact, suited to the work, a fact that has been visible to every observer on the range, except the one person whose judgment is formally recorded against her file. She keeps her eyes fixed at a point 12 inches above Calder's left shoulder, the way you learn to do when maintaining a tension stance in circumstances designed to make you lose it. The observer has her black notebook open. She writes every word Calder said during the Reyes stop. The time, 12:20 hours. The names of everyone present. The duration in minutes and seconds. She writes it the way a lawyer writes, without editorializing, because editorializing is the document's enemy. While she writes, a candidate in the adjacent lane, lane 6, second in sequence, has a live round, partially chambered in a configuration the RSO has not caught from his current angle. Not enough to fire, enough to matter. She covers the distance between her observer stake and the candidate in 4 steps. Takes the rifle right-handed, magazine drop, slide lock, barrel check, round extracted, weapon returned to safe. 9 seconds. One-handed. The sequence is textbook perfect. Not safe by accident, but economical, the way emotion becomes economical, when it has been drilled past the threshold of conscious execution. When the hands know the answer before the mind has finished processing the question. She grounds the weapon and hands it back. 0 words exchanged with the candidate, 0 words with the RSO, 0 words with anyone. Calder is 50 meters uprange and does not see it. Lance Corporal Reyes, walking off her assessment position at 12:30, sees every second of it. She does not say anything. She watches the woman walk back to the observer stake and pick up the notebook as if nothing interrupted it. At 14:45 hours, the observer walks past the water point without slowing. She sets a laminated data card on the log beside the coolers as she passes, a windmill conversion table, the 600-meter column hand-marked in red pen at 3 specific hold values. No eye contact, no instruction. Gone before Reyes has finished reading the first line. Reyes looks up. She looks at the lane where the woman has already disappeared into the staging area. She looks back at the card for a long time. "Thank you," she says, to no one, to the empty air at the water point, to whoever the woman with the cane turns out to be. She slides the card into her data book between page 12 and page 13. She walks back to her lane. The notebook closes. The observer looks toward the stalking lane, toward Calder moving on to the next assessment position. Her expression has not changed, not tighter, not colder, not any different than it was at 0600 hours on day 0, when Calder made his joke in front of 23 candidates, and she set a plastic chair aside with one hand. Whatever she is accounting for, whatever is accruing in the notebook and behind her eyes, none of it lives on her face. If what you just watched made your blood boil, you are not alone, and you have not yet seen what he tries to put on paper. Stay with us. 21 days in, Calder sets the performance down and picks up a pen. Working through web, he files a formal access restriction request against the observer, citing Observer Conduct Protocol, Section 4, Paragraph 2 of the Range Standard Operating Procedure, a clause drafted originally to manage disruptive civilian spectators during public demonstration events. The clause has been invoked fewer than a dozen times in the school's history, and never against an individual who was not actively disrupting live fire operations. It was written for people who wandered into restricted zones or refused to clear the line on command, not for credentialed administrative observers conducting authorized presence at a federal training installation. The filing is deliberate in its choice of instrument. Calder has selected the one administrative mechanism available to him that requires no performance review, no commanding officer sign-off on the complaint itself, and no named accuser beyond the requesting party. It is legally thin. It is technically alive. Webb's name is on top. Calder's name is in the requested by field. The mechanism will exile her to lane 7, the administrative observation bay, behind plexiglass, 40 meters from the firing points, no direct sightline to the active lanes, a position from which she can observe approximately as much as a person watching through a frosted window. On paper, her access narrows. Major Des Adeyemi, Course Commandant, 38 years old, an 04 whose career has been defined by the capacity to understand situations before committing to conclusions, reads the document in his office at 0900 hours. He reads it twice. His expression does not finalize into anything. He initials the corner. Not approved, not denied. Pending. He tells Webb to leave it. Earlier that morning, in the range briefing room at 0735, the lane assignments are on the dry erase board. Lane 7, Administrative Observation Bay. Every cadre member in the room registers the change in their own way, arms folded, weight shifting, no eye contact offered in her direction. The candidates read the room and understand that something has shifted in the institutional arrangement without understanding the full dimensions of what. She sits at the back of the room with both hands flat on the table, spine not touching the chair back, watching the briefing proceed. While the rest of the room moves and adjusts and calculates, she sits like someone who has already run the numbers and found the result unremarkable. Major Adeyemi enters late. He stops in the doorway for a moment. He takes a seat. At 14:12 hours, at the administrative intake desk outside range headquarters, she submits a Form 1553, a standard USMC administrative inquiry request, under her cover identity. 1 page, properly signed, requesting access to qualification score records for Class 26-1 and the 3 preceding cycles, Classes 25-2, 25-1, and 24-3. It is filed the same afternoon that Calder's restriction request reaches the Commandant's desk. The same day. The paper trail now runs in 2 directions simultaneously. The junior clerk at the intake desk accepts the form without looking up. She walks out. On the gravel path along the south perimeter fence at 1600 hours, Eli Voss photographs the lane manifest printout with his personal phone. He holds the image for 3 seconds. He deletes it. He opens the green notepad and writes the lane assignments by hand instead. The same habit he has maintained since day 0, because a handwritten record requires an active human decision to produce, and active human decisions are harder to dispute than photographs, and Voss has been in enough rooms after the fact to understand the difference. The notepad is running low on blank pages. At 1730 hours, a courier arrives at course headquarters. HQMC, routing stamp on the exterior. No return unit listed. The envelope goes to Major Adeyemi's desk directly, bypassing the administrative office. Inside, a green folder, letter-sized, the tab labeled with a name and pay grade combination that does not appear on any document currently held at the Marine Sniper course. Not the course manifest, not the observer registry, not the cadre personnel file, not the Form 1553 received that afternoon. Adeyemi opens it. He reads the first line. He sits back very slowly, the way a man sits when a calculation he has been running informally turns out to have a definitive answer. He does not reach for the phone. He sits completely still for 30 seconds, which is not something he does. Then he closes the folder and slides it under the desk blotter. 28 days in, Eli Voss has been filling pages in the green notepad for 4 weeks and sharing them with no one. That changes at 22:04 hours in a dark pickup parked 40 meters outside the range gate with the engine off and the windows up. Earlier, at 14:15 hours, in the Lane 7 observation bay behind plexiglass, the observer stands at the long window with a personal spotting scope, a civilian model, compact, the kind that fits in a jacket pocket without printing. A candidate on Lane 3 is struggling through the afternoon heat. The Mirage at 800 meters is compressing his visual target field by roughly 15%, a thermal distortion condition he has not learned to quantify or compensate for. She is behind plexiglass with no authorized access to the line. She reads the mirage through the glass and calls the correction aloud in a murmur, to no one in particular, to the air in the bay, to herself, the way a mathematician works a problem at a whiteboard when no one asked for the solution. Right 2, up point 3, hold for the shimmer drift. Quarter MOA, precise to the limit of what a called correction can be. In the corridor behind the bay, Staff Sergeant Webb is checking the daily logbook. He stops walking. He heard her through the partition. He looks through the interior window. She has not moved. She is behind plexiglass, exactly 40 meters from the firing points in the administrative bay that Calder put her in, and she called the correction to herself in a room that was supposed to be a consequence, and her correction was correct. She does not know Webb is there. The candidate fires at 800 meters. He misses. Her correction, called to the empty air of the observation bay, with no one authorized to act on it, would have been a center hit. Webb closes the logbook. He stands in the corridor for a moment. Then he walks back the way he came. At 1900 hours, in the administrative records room, file cabinets along 3 walls, a photocopier in the corner that takes 30 seconds to warm up. Voss works through class rosters against qualification scores for classes 24-3, 25-1, and 25-2. He cross-references the rosters against the disqualification logs. The pattern does not announce itself. It assembles over hours, the way a face assembles in a long exposure photograph. Not zeros, not dramatic failures, but mid-range scores in the 70s that should have cleared passing threshold, and did not, with procedural disqualification notations attached in every case, never performance-based, always administrative, always defensible in isolation. When the female candidate attrition figures are extracted and placed against the timeline across 3 class cycles, they form a line so consistent it has no natural variance. What has 0 natural variance was not produced by nature. Voss has 28 years in the rifle, and one rule he has never broken: verify what you cannot afford to ignore. He has been verifying since day 0. What he found in the records room tonight required no interpretation. The line was there. The line had been there for 6 years, drawn in gradual increments by a mechanism careful enough to survive any single incident review. The mechanism survived because no one was looking at the full set simultaneously. He closes the last binder and sits for a moment in the fluorescent light before he stands up. The photocopier hums in the corner and then goes quiet. At 17:30 hours, she places an unlabeled manila envelope into the back of the range log cabinet slot behind the range card. Envelope thickness, 1 inch, 7 pages inside. She locks the cabinet with the standard key from the standard hook, the key that every cadre member and every range safety officer and every civilian consultant on the course has access to. She does not look around when she locks it. She walks out of range headquarters in the flat, late afternoon light and does not vary her pace. In the dark pickup at 22:04 hours, Voss opens an encrypted application on a personal phone, 3-node routing, not his work phone, and dials a number he has not called in 4 years. The call connects on the second ring. He gives a code name the range has never heard. The call lasts 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Colonel Sarah Ochoa, HQMC IG liaison for MARSOC's Covert Evaluation Program, is not surprised to hear from him, and she tells him why. She has been watching since day 1, Eli. You have been watching her watch. The question now is, who else is caught up? He makes 2 lines in the green notepad. He tears the page out, folds it once. He walks through the range gate, crosses the headquarters building, and stops at a door that has not appeared in this story before. He slides the folded page under it. 2 letters on the placard. IG. She left 7 pages in a locked cabinet that anyone with the standard key can open. Think carefully about who else has that key. Subscribe to find out. Day 35. 0200 hours. The only scene in this story that goes inside her head. The BOQ room is dark except for the range safety lamp visible through the single window. A slow orange pulse, cycling every 4 seconds. The kind of light that does not illuminate so much as mark time. She is sitting on the edge of the rack in PT gear. Right leg extended fully forward, the old scar above the knee visible. Pale. The entry scar smaller than the exit, which is how through and throughs work when the round travels clean and fast and takes nothing structural with it on the way out. She's been sitting here for a while. She's not moving toward sleep. The orange pulse moves across the wall at its 4-second interval. 35 days in, 14 more to go if the timeline holds. On the desk mat, her service pistol. She field strips it one-handed, in the dark, by feel. Magazine drop, slide lock, barrel out, recoil spring clear. 9 seconds. She does it again. 9 seconds. The weapon is already clean. It was clean before she sat down. But the hands know the sequence the way the lungs know breathing. Past thought, past instruction, below the level where intention lives. She built this in her hands before the wound, and it survived the wound and everything that came after it, which is one of the few things from before the doorframe that transferred intact to after. The field strip is not maintenance. It is the thing she does in the dark, when the arithmetic requires a dark room to complete correctly. She has been thinking about a city she will not name in this story, a classified extract, 2 years back, when she was 28, which is young for some things and not for others. The extract was going correctly until it was not. A doorframe on the exfil route, a contact she had indexed and then deprioritized for 3 seconds, because the stack was moving and the timing window was narrowing, and 3 seconds felt like a reasonable margin until they turned out to be 3 seconds too long. She ran 11 minutes on a leg that had already made its structural decision without consulting her, because there were still people in the stack who needed to reach the extraction vehicle, and they were going to reach it. They did. Every one of them. The record was sealed and recoded as a training accident, not to protect her reputation, which was already secured, but because a sealed file is a more precise instrument than a public one in the hands of people who know how to use it. She has understood since she was 24 that both things can be true at once. The limp is real, the cover story fits around it cleanly, and neither fact requires the other to be explained or justified. What the cane is cover for is not the wound. The wound is what it is. What the cane is cover for is the 12 years before the wound. She thinks about it the way she thinks about most things requiring sustained attention, as arithmetic. What she is carrying against what the job requires her to carry. The equation has never failed to balance. She was 24 when she first ran the arithmetic consciously, in the back of a vehicle on a road in East Africa. Corporal tab on her collar. Sniper qual 2 months behind her. The first real deployment's first real weight settling into the body's permanent inventory. She has been running it since, and the output has always been the same. She does not expect tonight to be the exception. The orange pulse on the wall marks 4 seconds, marks 4 more. At 0231 hours, she opens the black notebook to the last written page, entries from day 10 through day 28, each one time-stamped, each one precise. She writes one line at the top of the next blank page. The orange pulse from the range safety lamp outside moves across the desk surface at its 4-second interval. The words she writes are visible and unreadable. She closes the notebook. She picks up a set of dog tags from the corner of the desk. Small, lightweight, not hers. The chain is shorter than standard issue length, and the metal is worn at the edges in a way that takes years to produce. She holds them in her palm for a moment while the metal warms. She sets them down, face up. She turns off the desk lamp. The orange pulse is the only light. In the dark, she says one word. It is a call sign. It is not her own. The room holds it for 2 full seconds. Then cut. 42 days in. Calder has stopped managing access and managing perception. He has gone to the school's legal officer with a signed letter. At 15:20 hours, in the office of Lieutenant Colonel Maura Nuiz, school staff judge advocate, Staff Sergeant Webb delivers the document. 1 page, typed on Calder's behalf, signed by Calder himself. A formal written allegation that the observer's credentials may have been issued on falsified administrative orders, with a request that her range access be suspended pending a formal review of the underlying documentation. It is not a range conduct form. It is not an informal complaint. It is a written allegation of falsified federal documents, signed, hand-delivered, on record. Nuiz has been a staff judge advocate for 11 years. She reads the document the way a lawyer reads anything a line supervisor delivers in person. For what it says, and for what the person who sent it does not understand about what it says. She sets the page down. Leave it. No elaboration. No indication of what comes next. Webb leaves it. Nuiz picks up her desk phone after the door closes and dials a 4-digit internal number. The call is answered on the first ring. She says something brief, replaces the receiver, and reads the letter a second time. At 16:40 hours, rain arrives on the east perimeter fence, steady and flat, the kind that does not announce itself as weather, but simply exists. Calder walks the gravel path from the range headquarters building with Webb behind him on the right, and Corporal Ferris O'Day trailing on the left. He stops 6 feet from her. The rain runs off the brim of his cover at a steady line. The credentials don't verify, ma'am. He is cold, not loud, operating in a register he has not used in 42 days, because every previous escalation has been either performative or bureaucratic. Not through any channel I have access to, and I have spent the last week looking. She has her weight on both feet, cane in her left hand, but not leaning into it. She does not move. The rain lands on her the same way it lands on the fence posts. I filed the question with the school's staff judge advocate this afternoon. As of this morning, you are on formal notice. He has closed the distance to 4 feet. Whatever you think you are doing on my range, ma'am, you are about to be done doing it. He is advancing and gesturing, and she is a fixed point that has no apparent interest in the approach. The rain falls on her with complete indifference to the fact that a 17-year gunnery sergeant is standing 4 feet away, telling her what she is. Corporal O'Day, on the left flank, stops walking. He watches. While Calder is still speaking, she raises her right hand and takes a single photograph. Ruggedized documenting camera, compact, automatic timestamp, encrypted storage. It has been in her jacket pocket since day 10. She does not conceal the act of taking the photograph. She does not ask permission. Calder sees her do it. He does not finish the sentence he was in the middle of. There is nothing he can append to that moment that does not make the photograph worse. He turns. He walks toward the armory. Webb follows without a word. Corporal O'Day remains. He is looking at the space where Calder stood and calculating something. She watches Calder reach the armory door. And then, slowly, the way an expression arrives when a calculation that has been running for 6 weeks finally produces its result. She smiles. Small. Private. The expression of someone confirming something they already understood. Not satisfaction exactly. Recognition. Corporal O'Day is the only witness in the perimeter walkway. He looks away fast. Calder reaches the armory door. He puts one hand on it, stops, and looks back. the reflex of a man who does not fully trust what he has left behind him. He sees the smile. He stands with the door half open for 2 full seconds. Something behind his eyes goes very quiet. Not calm, not composed, but the specific quiet of a man who has just understood the shape of a thing he cannot change. He goes inside. The door swings shut. Day 49. Final qualification day for Class 26-1. The 800-meter known distance range in the same flat light as Day 0, 49 days later. For the first time since she walked through the gate, the cane is against the back wall of the Lane 7 observation bay. She stands at the long window, without it. Observer badge on the windowsill beside her, not on her chest. Both hands at her sides. Every person on the range is in motion. Candidates chambering rounds, cadre working the line, range safety officers moving between stations. The whole infrastructure of a final qualification day running at its procedural maximum. She stands without the cane, without the wall behind her, without the badge on her chest, and the stillness has a quality now that it did not have on Day 0. On Day 0, you had to look for it. Today, it is simply present. The way a ridge is present in a landscape once you know where to look, and then you cannot stop seeing it. Major Adeyemi enters the bay at 0700 to check the sign-in log and stops walking when he sees her. He stands in the doorway for a moment with the sign-in log in his hand. Then he walks to the log station and signs it and does not speak to her because there is nothing left to determine, and the correct response to that is silence. Staff Sergeant Webb passes the exterior window and stops. 3 candidates on the line, without knowing why, look back at the plexiglass bay. At 0748 hours, an unscheduled vehicle arrives at the range gate. Brigadier General Corvin Alace, MARSOC commander, 52 years old, 4 stars worth of institutional authority and utilities, and no ceremony at all, steps out and walks through the gate. He does not stop at the commandant's office. He does not stop at the staging area. He walks past Calder at the head of the 800-meter line. He acknowledges Major Adeyemi, who has moved to intercept, with a nod that closes the intercept, and keeps walking. He stops 3 feet from the woman who has come out of the Lane 7 bay and is standing on the gravel apron of the range. Eli Voss steps forward from the observer lane. It is the first deliberate and visible movement he has made in 49 days of watching, and it has the quality of a period at the end of a sentence that has been building since Day 0. He spent 28 years in the rifle before he was a consultant, and his voice, when he chooses to use it, has the carrying quality of someone who has given range commands in conditions noisier than this one. He speaks at a volume the line can hear. Every person on the 800-meter range hears it. Exercise Iron Watch, Senior Evaluator, MARSOC Sniper Development Cell on official grading authority. Day 49. The range holds that for a moment, the way a body holds a breath before it understands what to do next. The general looks at her for exactly 1 second. Then he raises his right hand in a hand salute, a protocol break so severe and so deliberate in front of a formed unit that the 800-meter line goes absolutely silent. No one on a range this size has stopped moving all at once in a very long time. She returns the salute, clean, no lag, no adjustment. The salute of someone for whom this is the correct response to a specific situation, not a gesture made for an audience. Master Sergeant Ardent, the general lowers his hand. Kestrel 1, your evaluation report is due on my desk at 1700 hours. I trust Class 26-1 has been instructive. Sir. 1 word. Precisely the right number. She picks up the observer badge from the bay windowsill, not to wear it. She holds it for a moment, then hands it to the general's aide. The badge that she has worn for 49 days, the entire surface of her cover identity, passed off in one motion with no ceremony. The salute lasted 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, 23 candidates on the 800-meter line, 4 cadre instructors, 1 retired operator, 1 staff judge advocate who drove to the range without being asked, and 1 very pale staff sergeant all arrived at the same understanding at different speeds. Gesicht Calder arrives last. The distance he has to travel shows in his face. Confusion arrives first. Who is the general rendering honors to, and under what authority? Disbelief second. No protocol exists for saluting the woman with the cane. There is no rank on her chest. This cannot be what it appears to be. Recognition third. Fast and total. The observation stake on day 3. The notebook she never closed. The cane she was not leaning on this morning. The Form 1553 through the administrative intake. The photograph on the perimeter 2 weeks ago. The HQMC green folder on the commandant's desk that Adeyemi never discussed. Horror arrives last, and it is the kind that does not metabolize quickly. He has been 1 pay grade below her since day 0. He has been standing on a range she has been officially grading since day 0, under orders he has never seen, filling out a record he did not know existed. He takes 1 step forward. His mouth opens on something, an explanation, an objection, a word that does not know yet what it is. Major Adeyemi steps into the space in front of him, not touching, just present. Exactly there. Don't. The 2 aides who remained at the general's vehicle are walking through the range gate now. They are not carrying clipboards. The manila envelope from the log cabinet is open on the legal conference room table at 1100 hours. 7 pages spread across the surface. Qualification score anomalies across classes 24-3, 25-1, 25-2, and 26-1. Annotated in a second hand that is not Calder's, a secondary cadre member who maintained a parallel ledger and is in the room today voluntarily. Seated, counsel present. The particular posture of someone who has decided that being cooperative today is preferable to being uncooperative later. Staff Sergeant Webb does not look at anyone. He asked for counsel 40 minutes ago. He is still waiting. Lieutenant Colonel Nweze sits at the end of the table with the 7 pages arranged in front of her and a legal notepad beside them, and she has been writing for 45 minutes. She is writing in the specific way of someone who has practiced law long enough to know that the first draft of the record is the one that matters. Not comprehensive, not artful, just accurate and time-stamped and signed. The secondary cadre member, a staff sergeant, whose name will appear in the formal IG filing but not in this story, watches the notepad and says, when asked, that the score modifications began in Class 24-3, that the pattern was Calder's idea and Calder's instruction, and that he documented it separately because he wanted insurance. He uses that word. Insurance. Nweze writes it down. In the adjoining corridor, 3 of the general's staff are managing the administrative logistics of what happens next. Which office gets which copy of which document, in what order, and when. The machine that produces accountability is large and slow and entirely indifferent to the feelings of anyone caught in its gears. It will take weeks to complete what began this morning. The legal record is already open and will not close. At 1300 hours, Major Adeyemi countersigns the official Class 26-1 evaluation report. All 23 candidate scores certified under her grading authority, 17 pass. An administrative flag against Lance Corporal Danny Reyes, filed against her in Week 3 on a procedural pretext, living in the IG folder since the manila envelope was retrieved, is formally rescinded. Her terminal qualification score, 82.4. A pass earned on a lane where the assessment was conducted against her before it was conducted for her. The windmill conversion table with the hand-marked 600-meter column is in Reyes's data book, between page 12 and page 13, where she placed it the same afternoon she found it on the log by the water coolers. She does not know who left it. She knows what it meant. Master Sergeant Tessa Ardent signs the evaluation's cover page with her real name and grade. Master Sergeant E8. For the first time in 49 days, the signature matches the evaluator. At 13:30 hours, Corporal Ferris O'Day walks down the range headquarters hallway and stops outside the legal officer's door. He saw the smile on the perimeter in week 6. He looked away fast. He's not looking away now. He knocks. The door opens. He goes in. At 14:30 hours, Gunnery Sergeant Mike Calder and Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb are escorted from course headquarters by the General's aides. Calder is in civilian clothes. A bag was retrieved from the BOQ and carried out for him. He does not look at the range as he passes it. He does not look at the candidates on the line, or at the target stakes at 800 meters, or at the scoring table where an observer's badge sat for 49 days. He looks at nothing. Out on the line, the class is still firing the final strings of the terminal qualification. The range does not stop for him. It is not built to. Lance Corporal Danny Reyes fires her final string at 14:42 hours. She is on the 800-meter line, prone, the range conditions mild and the light flat. And she does not know what has happened in the headquarters building in the last 3 hours because no one on the line was told. She knows her terminal score when it comes back from the pits. She writes it in the data book in the column for day 49 and closes the cover and lies still on the firing mat for a moment, the way a person lies still when they have finished something that required their whole attention for a long time. Then she sits up, clears her rifle, and begins breaking down her lane. The range is still running. There is work to do. She waited 49 days. Not because she was patient, because the record required it to be complete. If that is the kind of story you are here for, subscribe to Honor Tales. We will be here. Day 70, a private shooting bay, early morning. No candidates, no cadre, no posted distance marker visible from the firing position. The light is flat and low, the kind of early light that arrives before the sun commits to a direction, and the range flag at the 200-meter pole is barely breathing. She is prone behind a precision bolt action that belongs to no unit inventory. Right leg extended back at the angle that does not aggravate the scar above the knee. The shot breaks clean. She dry cycles the bolt, reads the entry in the data book open beside the rifle, writes 2 numbers in the margin, and settles back into position. She has been here since 0500 hours. The data book has 16 entries. The 3 most recent are at distances she has not fired at an official range in 2 years, distances that require a corrected firing solution for air density, for the angle of the terrain, for factors that do not appear in any standard course of fire, because standard courses of fire are not built for the places she goes. On the sandbag beside the rifle's stock, a dog tag chain, the metal warm from being in a pocket for the last 21 days, catching the low early light at an angle where it is present without being prominent. The name on the tag belongs to a person this story did not name. The call sign she spoke in a dark room in the middle of the night 3 weeks ago belonged to the same person. Both of those facts are part of the arithmetic she carries, and the arithmetic still balances. She fires again. Dry cycles, makes a notation. The range flag turns once in a wind shift from the north, and she notes the degree and the duration without writing it down, because some data goes into the book and some data goes into the hands, and she learned the distinction long before she learned to call herself Kestrel 1. Her secure phone buzzes once on the sandbag. She picks it up without moving her cheek from the stock. The screen shows a grid coordinate in a format she recognizes. Below the coordinate, a sector code. 3 letters in the identifier field. MGL. The Maghreb corridor. Below the sector code, a call sign she recognizes and was not expecting to see on this screen, on this morning. Al-Watar. The Arabic word for the bowstring. The grid coordinate, overlaid against a sector map she holds in memory, places the point of interest in an operational zone in northern Mali that has been associated for 14 months with the movements of Colonel Idris Belkacem. She looks at the coordinate for a long time. The range flag at 200 meters turns once more and goes still. Then she closes the data book. She caps the pen. She sets her cheek back on the stock. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.